panelists until all of them have spoken. We're going to have about 15 or 20 minutes towards the end for any audience questions. The festival organizers thank Tucson Orthopedic Institute, Ellen Wheeler, and Betsy and Michael Boxer for sponsoring this location, and Robbie and Mary Michael for sponsoring the upcoming discussion. Make sure to stop by the book sales area and author signing after the session. Book sales at the festival help support the cost of the festival and the local literacy programs it funds. You can also help keep this event free and open to everyone by becoming a friend of the festival or a sponsor of the festival. Please stop by the Friends booth or by going online to TucsonFestivalofBooks.org. And as we begin, please just silence your phones. You're welcome to take photos, but only when we're not talking and look stupid, okay? Because nothing is worse than seeing yourself, you know? Yeah. If y'all look great, but we look terrible, no thank you. To start off, my name is Jessica. I'm going to be moderating the panel today. Thank you. And I'm going to introduce our authors today. To my left here, we have USA Today bestseller, who has a master's degree in library science, and I didn't know that until yesterday, which is really exciting. That was my dream as a child. I mean, I'm almost 40, it's still a dream. And she is also solely responsible for the resurgence of my love for vampires. Yeah, you're bringing it all back around. Thanks for that. Her most recent release, although she has a new release coming on Tuesday, is Queen of Myth and Monsters. This is Scarlett St. Clair. To Scarlett's left, we have Annette Christie, whose book, For Twice in My Life, was phenomenal. I just finished it a couple days ago, so thank you. Annette has an interesting history when it comes to weird jobs. She's actually been the extra in not one, but 2 Lindsay Lohan movies.
I've got stories.
And not only that, but when she tweeted about coming to the festival a couple of days ago, she tried to promise that we wouldn't talk about Pedro Pascal. Absolutely not going to happen. It's book talk. We all love Pedro, so we're going to be talking about Pedro today. And over on the end is Rita, an Audie Award winner, USA Today bestseller, and the first romance author to make me cry in 2023 with her novel, Before I Let Go. So, it's all a pretty young crowd in here, but for those of you who don't know what Book Talk is, I'm going to give you a little precursor. And if you don't know, congratulations. You have the time suck. So TikTok is a social media platform for people to make videos for entertainment. You can kind of compare it to YouTube, except that YouTube is for longer form videos. TikTok, you can make a 10-minute video. I will scroll along. I do not have time for that. We're looking for shorter form videos. And I did research last night. We're putting that in parentheses. I am on BookTok and I did scroll all night long. Did I scroll for BookTok? No, I scrolled for Jasper the Doll. And if you don't know who that is, please don't force yourself to watch that. It's incredibly insane and makes 0 sense, but it's still incredibly hilarious. So we're gonna start in our questions here. We're gonna keep it kind of loose. I don't like a lot of structure in my life. It makes too much anxiety. So our first question is,
There it goes. It started.
I think it's the button if you're like a little funky on the button, so kind of hold it. You should be okay. Our first question is, how has TikTok changed the way you market your books, and what tips do you have for marketing? Do you have any of those tips? Start out with a big question.
Yeah. You're there. You're halfway there.
All right. I think that for me, I like to write stuff that's more high concept anyways, and for anyone who is unfamiliar with that term, high concept usually means that it's the plot can be broken down in 1 to 2 sentences. So for example, My first book, The Rehearsals, is about a couple who breaks up the night before their wedding, only to wake up the next morning stuck in a time loop together. So, I mean, that's how I approach it anyway, something that works well for a platform like BookTok. However, we know that BookTok has really pushed tropes and discussions of tropes. And so even as you're querying for an agent, or if you're on submission and going out to editors, it's really smart to include, this is a second chance romance, this is friends to lovers, and something that you can do on BookTok as well. So I think we've always kind of had the tropes in the back of our mind, but right now we're like, yeah, let's push those, let's let readers know what they can come and get.
Yeah, I don't know if I have sage advice either, but I definitely think leaning into the tropes, finding a quote in something that you've written that kind of like excites everybody. I see a lot of people saying, I saw this one quote, I bought like a book based on this one quote, and then they're like, I don't know why I bought this book on a one quote, and it's either like it's gonna deliver or it's not, but I think that's something that I lean into. And I think just being yourself, you know, being very natural, being conversational, feeling approachable. So much of the marketing on TikTok is done by readers, you know, which is amazing. It's the things that tend to go viral, it's organic, you know, it's like, the thing that I really love about BookTok is it gets to the heart of why we as book lovers love books so much. It's just people kind of gushing and sharing what touched them, you know, what moved them, what aroused them, you know. So much of the marketing that happens is kind of out of our control a lot of times. And I'm not great at it, but yeah, that's what I would say.
I went viral on TikTok not being on TikTok. And then my publisher said, you need to be on TikTok. And I was like, I don't really know why. You can go viral on TikTok and not be on TikTok. Does anyone follow me on TikTok? Well, half my videos are done by my assistant, Lexi, Reads by Lexi, and she does all the pretty quote things, because my brain is not there. And I do all the things where you see my face. And I think what my readers like is when I bitch on TikTok about stupid shit, so I do that, and that's the only way. That's the only way it's changed my marketing. But all I did is take that from Instagram and put it on TikTok. But otherwise, I would say just pick the platform that you feel most comfortable with and market from there, because people will be able to tell if you're like not interested in TikTok, and I think you can tell I'm not interested in TikTok. Which is ironic because I'm on a panel about TikTok. But it's harder for me to to like video myself. It was really awkward. And I like to write. Obviously, I'm a writer, so Instagram is more conducive to that, and that's sort of where I choose to market. And I started out marketing on Pinterest because I knew I was going to create a fandom, and fandoms live on Pinterest and they live on Tumblr. And I knew that because I'm a librarian, and that's how I think. And no, I don't think anyone had really thought much about that before, because when I started to do it, all my reviews were like, I found this book on Pinterest, and I was like, it's working! So that's how I started marketing.
With our sweaty hands.
I know. We're anxious.
So I actually understand that making videos is hard. I have a TikTok, but I don't like to be in front of a camera. I prefer to be in front of a microphone. I'm a podcaster. I am not making videos. With that being said, with people who do have those issues, how do you think, and what caused it? What made BookTok so huge? Is it all down to the readers being so excited? Or is it all down to people wanting to find other people who are just as excited?
I think it's all those things, but I think it was also, from my estimation, timing. Meaning, you know, the pandemic struck as soon as TikTok kind of started taking off, and we're all in our houses with nothing to do. And a lot of people who had never really read books since they were forced to read books started turning to books, and a lot of people who have never read romance started reading romance. I mean, we're all romance writers, and I think there's so much hope that's woven into what we write. And we were in such a dark place globally that I think the guaranteed happily ever after was part of it. But then I think specifically with BookTok, a community started growing. And it was very hard to connect with people during COVID because we were all trapped in our houses, unable to see anybody. And I think a lot of people who maybe never knew how much they loved books or what was there for them found it in books, and then also found a community at a time when they were completely isolated. And then it's just mushroomed and grown from there. But I think part of it was just great, awful, because it was a global pandemic, but timing.
Yeah, just piggybacking on what Kennedy said, I heard recently that during World War II, readership really increased. Like, people turned to books, and then even once the war was over, they continued to be readers. And I've heard that in times of recession, in times of strife, there are two things that do well, and they are affordable luxuries. They are books and they are chocolate. And so, I mean, it makes sense, right? So, like Kennedy said, we had this thing where we needed our affordable luxuries, we needed comfort, and we also needed a sense of belonging.
I have nothing to add to that because that's exactly what I think.
Thank you.
As someone who is on BookTok to scroll and lose like 4 hours after work before bed, when I should be doing homework, it is a community. It is somewhere that you go to find other people who enjoy what you like. As readers, as romance readers specifically, finding a community is difficult in your hometown. So finding that on BookTok is incredibly easy. And then I've also found, and I don't know if anybody else has experienced this, you get onto BookTok and you find people who don't necessarily read romance regularly. I follow someone who's a huge thriller reader, and I interact with her so much on there that it almost makes me want to start venturing into the thriller genre. Although I am a scaredy cat. I live alone and I'm terrified of everything. So the last thing I need is a thriller. That's why I read romance. When it comes to social media, not just TikTok itself, have you seen a shift in how fans interact with your books? So, Scarlett, you said you started on Pinterest and Tumblr, and then Tumblr died, and is attempting to make a resurgence, attempting to try again. How have you seen that shift happen with like Instagram and Facebook and things like that?
I'm trying to, oh, I thought you turned it, I thought you
We're struggling. It is terrible. It has a delay.
It does.
I don't know if I've noticed a difference it's just that people, more people engage. And for me, it's across all platforms. And I feel like in the last 6 months, it's been even at a higher level of engagement. And I am known for being a very responsive author. I do try to be like there, and I try to answer questions myself. And it's really funny when people make statements, and if they're kind of mean, and I respond to it, and then they backtrack hardcore because they didn't expect me to respond to it. I love those. That's my favorite. So I haven't really noticed a difference. I don't know if you guys feel like the engagement has like sort of. I think with my popularity growing, that's where I've seen the increase in the engagement. I don't know. Not helpful.
I think it's the same in the sense that it's just because TikTok is the most viral space we've ever had. As far as social media is concerned, it's just an increase in volume. But I do think there is something about the impact of posting on TikTok that's I don't know, the sobbing, like when people are posting the sad girl pose, or it's something about seeing this person like just sobbing, or I don't know, there does seem to be something that's a little bit different about TikTok and how people respond, and it could just be the viral nature of it. But I have seen an uptick like in engagement, and for me it crosses over to Instagram a lot. I don't know what that is, but there are certain books that I see of mine that are more popular on Instagram than on TikTok, and I don't know why that is. It's like I have a series called the Grip series, and all the Grip girls are on Instagram, and then I have a series called the Hoop series, and all the Hoops girls are on BookTok, and it's like I don't know what that is, but those audiences, I do know that audience trends younger. And so I don't know if that's what it is, but I see a lot of engagement. My DMs are like, I was just telling somebody yesterday, I'm like, I spend 40 minutes a day going through DMs. I need to stop. But it's just like, okay, I gotta stop. But seeing those little blue dots drives me crazy. I'm just like, I need to clear it out. But yeah, so.
Well, my first book came out in 2021, so I actually don't have anything to compare it to. Yeah, that is exciting. Thank you. But I will say, like, it is really nice to have a platform that when you do an in-book signing, some of my favorite moments, besides the old men who walk by carrying their James Patterson and they're like, "Good for you, you wrote a book," and I'm like, "Thanks, Grandma." But when I have people come up and tell me that the books have helped them get through their grief of losing a parent or divorce, and like that is so meaningful, and a medium like BookTok where people can get on and be like really authentic and really real, it's really cool to be able to have that sort of engagement with people you wouldn't normally see in an in-book signing.
Kennedy, you mentioned spending 40 minutes a night, 40 hours.
40 hours.
40 hours in a day. It has been an incredibly long weekend, y'all, sorry. You mentioned spending 40 minutes a day going through your DMs. How do you deal with that constant interaction with fans for all three of you? Do you find a way to kind of separate yourself without being standoffish to your fans, or do you kind of look at your DMs and go, "Thank you," and continue to scroll, kind of like I do?
It depends. Like some of the DMs are, I'm not the kind of person who, if you didn't like a book, and you tag me, I just ignore that. Like, I'm like, that ain't got nothing to do with me. Like, for me, books are art for us, but as soon as you make it available and it's on sale, it's a product. And anyone, them assessing it, critiquing it is valid. It has nothing to do with me. But when someone tags me on it, I just ignore it. But sometimes they come in your DMs like, "Did you see that I tagged you on the negative review?" I'm like, "Boo, I got time for this. I got a real life I'm trying to live." So I just ignore those. But a lot of times people will take, you talked about that book being something that made you cry this year. A lot of my books are like that. And a lot of people are it sounds crazy, they're DMing me saying things like, "I'm going to therapy now because I read that book. I'm in marriage counseling now because I read that book. My mom died last year and now I'm in grief counseling because I read that book." So those are the types of things that I don't like to ignore. I like to interface with that because I wrote that book with intention. And my intention was for it to land in people's hearts that way. I wrote that book with people, specific people in mind, people who've experienced depression, people who experienced loss, people who, those were the people I had in mind when I wrote that book. That's the reason I wrote that book. So when someone comes to my DM saying, basically what you deployed that book to do, it happens for me. I want to interact with that. And when I have readers, there's some readers, there's a lot of readers, and there's some you just connect with on a certain level. I'm the oldest thing on BookTok. That's what you got to know, first of all. And so I have readers who call me auntie, And so they will come in my DMs, and it's ridiculous. I have to get better. But they'll come in my DMs, they're like, "Oh my gosh, Kennedy, I love this last book." And I'm like, "Oh," I stay up until 4 a.m. And I'm like, "Didn't you say you have an exam tomorrow?" No, this is literally me. "Didn't you say you have an exam tomorrow? What you doing up to 4 a.m.? How are your grades?" That's me. And so I'm like BookTok's auntie. I'm like, "I know you love reading, girl. You need to get out. You need some vitamin D. Go to the park. And I saw you saying you want to meet somebody. You need to get out." I mean, it's like, I'm like the auntie of BookTok. You know what I mean? So some of it is just that. I get that concerned about certain readers because they come to mean something to me. And you don't have that relationship with everybody, but there are consistent readers that even in this huge community, it's like a kind of a microcosm of readers who always comment, always support, always shout for you, and you kind of build a community within a community.
I've done the opposite of you. I had to shut down my DMs and my tags on Instagram because it was way too overwhelming, and I have very high anxiety. I know you probably don't think I do because I'm such a socialite. Sure. But it was so overwhelming for me, and it got to a point where I just knew I couldn't handle it anymore. And the thing that was so painful for me is shutting down those stories of the way that I was able to change people's lives, because I say this all the time, I never thought I could change the world writing romance, and I have, and that's the one thing I set out to do. And when you have to sort of choose between protecting your mental health and having no boundaries, it is kind of difficult, because I thought I was going to miss out on those stories, but I haven't. And there are other ways that you can contact me other than Instagram, but particularly, I know this is a book talk panel, but I'm on Instagram. And yes, and it's to the point that I don't click on anything I'm tagged in on BookTok, because I don't know what it's going to be. I don't know if it's going to ruin my day, and I know I shouldn't be that way, but it is the way I am, and I am such that one thing will throw off my whole day, and then I can't write anymore, and that's my well-being, right? I have to be able to do that. So it's a very difficult decision, but I do have assistants who will check out those TikToks, and they'll send them to me if they're good. But I have trust issues, so, I don't do it. But so I think I admire that you're still able to respond to your DMs and spend that time doing it. I just, that was such a difficult decision. So I love hearing your perspective as well, because man, what a struggle to sort of shut down a part that meant so much to me, but I still have a huge core group of those readers who can still message me. It's just like the new incoming people don't get that same interaction, and it sucks. But that's why I make a point to respond to all my comments. I have a Facebook group called Cult of Scarlet. That is where I am. People forget that the author is in the group, and I have to remind them. And can you tell I'm really big on boundaries? So it's interesting. I really appreciate that question.
It's not that it's hot, it's anxiety inducing to have all these faces staring at you. We're gonna work through it, it's fine.
Can you see how red my face is? I'm so hot.
You're all right. You're doing great. Kennedy stated that she wrote this book for people who experienced loss and who experienced depression, and I had an opportunity last night to thank her for that. I have experienced loss. I have experienced depression, and before I let go, if you haven't read it yet, just be prepared to be fully sobbing at like 1 a.m. And if you have to get on TikTok and sob at 1 a.m. and be like, you don't understand how this was, go for it. Right? Is that the new hashtag?
Yes.
Nancy Kennedy.
Thank you.
But as a reader and hearing how you interact with your fans, I do want to remind the fans and the readers that they are people too, and that they have feelings, and if you say something that would hurt your feelings, I can guarantee you it's going to hurt theirs, and that is the fastest way to get an author to shut down their DMs and no longer want to interact with you. I see it all the time on Twitter and on TikTok and on Instagram. Just be mindful of that fact when you're on social media platforms. If you're writing reviews, don't tag the author in your negative review. I swear it's a conversation we have once a week.
I wish I was like you and I could just be like, that's on you.
They don't get my energy. You know what I mean? Like you don't get that from me. I am all about protecting my peace. I write because I'm compelled to write these stories, but that doesn't entitle anyone to my energy, to my peace of mind. And so that's why I do that, is to protect myself, because, and also the thing about BookTok is things get messy so fast. You as an author make a comment and it's screenshot and it's everywhere. And you're like, but no, I didn't mean, and it's too late. It mushrooms. So I just stay out of folks' business unless, specifically it's something I need to respond to.
So my next question is actually from one of my friends who is an independent author and who has experienced this with TikTok specifically. Do you feel that TikTok, being what it is, do you feel that it gives people the idea that they are allowed to pirate your books? Piracy is a huge issue. If you're not paying for a book and it's not on Kindle Unlimited, you're doing it wrong. If you're going to your library, fantastic. But if you're going to one of those shady websites, I hope y'all get a virus. That's all I'm saying. Pay for your books, your authors deserve it.
I think there's this thought that if you are a published author, you're rich. And I have been asked by people I went to college with, so did the rehearsals make you rich? It is not an appropriate question. But I think there needs to be more transparency in publishing, and so here's a little bit of transparency for you. During the pandemic, a lot of publishers moved from when you get your advance, previously you would get that advance in 2 or 3 installments. But during the pandemic, a lot of publishers were like, well, we need to protect ourselves because there's so much insurity. And so we are going to start paying in 4 installments. So that means when I get my advance for my book, I get a quarter of it upon signing, I get a quarter of it upon turning in the manuscript that's been approved, I get a quarter of it when the hardcover comes out, and then a quarter when the paperback comes out. So that is an advance that is paid over 18 months. And so if you cannot afford a book, you can borrow it, you can talk to your library. There are other ways to get it because, like, let's not break down the authors too.
If you are a member of the Pima County Library, it is not, I'm gonna yell it out. If you are a member of the Pima County Library, your library card does not just stick in Tucson. You have access to, how many is it, Jess? 10 other libraries. On top of that, there is a section on the Pima County website, on the library website, where you can go in and you can request up to 30 books a month. You can do it all at once. You can do a couple a week. It doesn't matter. I've done it. No one should have told me about it. What was that?
Please don't do it all at once.
Because then you're going to inundate Jess. But you can do that. So if there's a book that you really want to read and you can't afford it, put it up there. They can either reject or approve it. If it gets rejected, try again in a different format. It could just be that they don't have the format you're requesting available. That is my PSA on the public library system.
One thing I wanted to add is a lot of Kindle Unlimited is huge on BookTok, because that's how so many people access their books. So a lot of your, favorite authors are Kindle Unlimited authors, and most Kindle Unlimited authors are self-published authors. I am what's called a hybrid author, meaning I self-publish and I also traditionally publish. Those self-published authors, if you're in Kindle Unlimited, when those books are pirated, a lot of them end up on other retail sites like Apple. And recently, one of my favorite people, Lauren Asher, her book in her Kindle Unlimited ebook ended up on Apple, and they took her book down. There is, if you're in Kindle Unlimited, there's basically a non-compete, there's an exclusivity clause where if your Kindle Unlimited ebook is found anywhere else, they can take your book down. That's your livelihood. And Lauren's okay. She's doing pretty good. But I have seen smaller indie authors who have almost lost their careers because somebody pirated their book that's in Kindle Unlimited. It ends up on some other retailer. Amazon takes it down, and it takes forever for them to get it back up. Like, it's our livelihood. I understand, and I sympathize with the difficulty, especially with international, readers who are like, it's really, really hard to get. But it's also, you're not entitled to a book, it's the same where you have to buy coffee, you have to buy books, it's our livelihood. And, we're successful authors, but I really think about indie authors, especially who are just starting out, who don't make as much money, whose entire careers could be wrecked because somebody felt like they were entitled to their book, pirated it, and it ends up somewhere that basically sweeps Kindle Unlimited away from them as an option. So just be mindful of that.
actually takes me into my next question. We know you went viral for writing something, and then you got, traditionally published with that. And Kennedy, you're a hybrid author, which means you publish on your own and with a publishing company. Do you feel that TikTok has given the platform for indie authors to succeed in a way that other social media platforms might not have been able to? So with the Kindle Unlimited coming in, we do see, I'm sure everybody on here has opened this microphone, I swear. We've all noticed, some of you might be KU readers, I'm a KU reader. A lot of my Kindle Unlimited books, if I see them on TikTok, I have like a wish list on Amazon, and it goes into the wish list, and then when I'm like, I don't know what to read, I have 650 books in my home, and I still go to my Kindle and go, I don't know what to read. So do you feel that BookTok has given a platform for these self-published authors that may not have been able to promote themselves?
I've thought a lot about this because I am, I've benefited from BookTok. But I think about Colleen Hoover and Abby Glines and Anna Todd and just so many authors who also went viral like back in 2014, and they were all indie romance authors and they got traditional book deals. And for me, the virality is with readers. So anywhere readers are, there's the chance that a book will go viral. I do think BookTok is unique in that it came about at the right time. Also KU, when people are struggling financially, KU is a great option. You have a subscription, you can get a ton of books that way, so I do think it lends itself to even more success. There's also something about BookTok that is, they are unashamed to love romance, and that is beautiful because so often, and coming from the library, there's in society in general, there's this conversation around romance that it doesn't have plot, they're not good books, they're only for women, blah, 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 these stupid things that people say all the time. And BookTok has made people more brazen and to talk about it just like ebooks did. Ebooks let people read romance more voraciously. So it's sort of this wave, I think. I could be wrong, but just looking at it from sort of like a librarian perspective, that's kind of where I come from, thinking about this wave of things, like what changed first? Well, I think it was ebooks, and now I think BookTok and KU kind of happened at a really good time, and that happened to be, the environment happened to be ripe for that kind of virality, I think. I don't know.
I belong to a couple of Facebook groups that are authors on TikTok, and they share tips and tricks, and I clearly take none of them. But the thing I've noticed is that for self-pubbed authors, because they have so much control, because they have all of the information at their hand, they can say, okay, this hook plus this song equaled this many sales, and they see it happening in real time. And so what happens is that self-published authors are using TikTok to market their books, whereas there is this pressure for traditionally published authors to use social media to market ourselves. So I think that so often, you can have an author who's really popular on TikTok, that doesn't translate to sales. There are some exceptions, like who's that thriller author who got that message from Scott, the reader? Yes, Jenica. So she has got this whole series about Scott, the reader who hated her book. She is hilarious. So now booksellers are talking about Scott, and Scott's gonna hate this, and Colleen Hoover used Scott in her blurb for her. Anyway, so it happens, but that's like an outlier. And so I do think that like TikTok, like the self-published authors are the champions of using it to sell books, whereas the rest of us were like, hey, I'm a dork, enjoy.
Have you seen the Scott merchandise that she put out? There's an amazing sticker, and it's hilarious. I'll have to find it for you before the end of the day. It was
I have no idea what he's doing.
Scott first off had the audacity to tell a woman that he was like, here's why all the reasons I hated your book. Like, ew, first off, keep that to yourself.
I think that, I honestly think that BookTok has been incredibly transformative for indie authors. As someone who built my career primarily as an indie author and only returned to traditional publishing last year, I'm in most of the author groups I'm in are self-published authors, you know, and the only way, before BookTok, the only way we could even fathom getting in bookstores, like physical bookstores like Barnes and Noble and places like that, is to go traditional. You know, people who wanted to see their books on shelves, traditional publishing was really the only way that was going to happen. BookTok, for whatever reason, is an environment that leans into, and it could be the demographic, leans into paperbacks in a way that we haven't seen before. Ebooks was what was so huge, and paperbacks were, I mean, for indie authors, it's not that we didn't think about it, but it was almost an afterthought. You know, it's because most of our sales were ebooks, and most of our sales for a lot of us were in KU. And so all of a sudden you have this demographic that's in a viral climate that is demanding paperbacks, and they show them. And all of a sudden, indie authors, BookTok has transformed publishing in general, because Barnes and Noble, there are, you know, those of us who are indie authors who they just weren't checking for it all, and all of a sudden you're seeing so many indie authors' books on physical shelves in stores, which is amazing. So I think it has been incredibly impactful for indie authors. The thing that I will say is that, and it's the technology, you know, because there's no other social platform that has the viral potential that the technology of TikTok does. And of course, we don't know what China's doing, so we got Chinese balloons, we don't know what's happening with TikTok, we just pray and it doesn't go away. But the other thing that I would say is that, and when we're talking about the algorithm of TikTok, it would be disingenuous of me to sit here as a Black author and not mention that there is algorithmic bias that TikTok has acknowledged. Like TikTok has said, our algorithm suppresses the content of Black creators, right? So and that we're gonna do better, but they're not doing better. So I do think that it's been incredibly transformative for indie authors and for traditional authors. It's been incredibly transformative for romance. You know, all of a sudden, because of what's happening with BookTok, it is affecting publishers' decisions and what they do and what they acquire. And it's amazing. You're seeing romance infiltrate broader culture in a way that we've never seen before. The romance tent is getting so much larger, and I'm really excited about that. So I can hold that in one hand, and in the same instance, hold in another hand of frustration that algorithmic bias and systemic racism means that BookTok is not the boom for Black authors that it is for everyone else. And you can look at the New York Times list, you can look at bestsellers list, on Amazon, and you don't see Black people. So my concern with BookTok and what I think that we as readers and people who love the art of reading is we need to interrogate systems of racism. And BookTok right now is functioning as a space where systemic racism is thriving, anti-Blackness is thriving. And so that's something that we should interrogate. I mean, if you look at the New York Times bestseller list, I love Colleen. Colleen's quoted on my book. I love Emily Henry. Emily Henry, our friends. Lucy Score, Close, Texton, Love You Girl. Like all of those women, the New York Times list is stacked with white women. And it's not queer, and it's not Black, and it's not brown. And my concern with BookTok that I want to make sure I say before I leave the stage is that when George Floyd happened, the publishing industry had a commitment to diversity. The publishing industry said, these are our commitments, these are the things that we're concerned about. And when BookTok exploded and systemic racism rose in that algorithm, all of a sudden, Black and brown authors, queer authors, we are being peripheralized in a way that is almost unprecedented. We haven't been this peripheralized since, 2010s. You know, so that's something that I think we should interrogate. And I'm very concerned about anti-Blackness on BookTok.
I want to follow that up before we get into audience questions. As people who scroll TikTok and who lose God-forsaken amounts of time on that app, when you are scrolling and you see a Black or brown creator interact with their post, put a like on it, follow them if you like their content, put a comment in there, tell them that you like what they are doing. It is so disheartening to see the amount of white, straight, women who are talking about romance. We as romance readers are so diverse. We love the genre. We are people who will speak out on any romance if we've loved it, even if we weren't sure we loved it, but we think someone else is going to love it. So when you are scrolling and you see someone who is not a straight white woman, I am begging you, like the video, comment on the video, follow them, go to their page and look at some of the other videos and speak out against that racism, against that algorithm. There are ways to make your algorithm do what you want it to do. You have to interact with those videos. With that being said, we do have about 20 minutes left, so we're gonna open the questions up for the audience. If you have a question, raise your hand. Speak loud. I am hard of hearing, unfortunately. And you're gonna have to speak loud because I might not hear all of it, all right? So, in the red.
As authors, what is it like when you come out with a book and almost immediately the readers are like, where's the next one?
Have you seen that meme? 3 people tried to post it in my Facebook group, and it's like, author releases book, and then it's like, readers, where's the next one? And it's like, listen here, you little shit. That's exactly how I feel. No, I am very grateful for the demand. I think the hard part for me, I'm in a very unique situation where the books that you're reading, I probably finished 4 months ago. So everyone's like, I want an Arc of Chaos. Give it to me now. It's not written, y'all. It does not exist. I'm in the middle of Gods right now. I'm on deadline. I have 70K to write by the 15th. So I am, this is how I operate. I know. Me too. I think what I should not do is I do put a lot of pressure on myself for it. Like, it makes me feel like I'm not doing enough, and I've been really coming to terms with that's not the case. It's just it's just the nature of having voracious readers, and that's what I'm grateful for at the end of the day. So.
Yeah, I think it's really hard for people outside of publishing to wrap their heads around just how slowly publishing moves. I remember when I sold The Rehearsals, I told a good friend of mine, and it was it was March, and she's like, oh, so will it be in bookstores this summer? And I'm like, oh no, honey, it'll be give me a year and a half. Yeah, and so that process is just so slow. So the writing process is slow, the editing process is slow, and then whatever's happening behind the scenes is slow too. We're all impatient.
Right, and I mean, indie publishing is much faster than traditional publishing. And so I'm fortunate that most of my books, I have, a lot of people found me through Before I Let Go because it was traditionally published and it was in bookstores and airports and places like that, so they've never read me. And I'm like, oh, boy, I got 30 books, So pointing them to your backlist is huge, but then also it's a real opportunity to support and amplify other authors. And so I'll say, oh, if you like this book, oh my gosh, you should give Jail Seekers a try. Oh my gosh, you should give, Not Malone a try. Oh my gosh, you should give, this person's book a try. And, oh, I love, Alexis, Hall, this book. So I think it's also a really great opportunity to if you like this, then you would like this. And sometimes that kind of scratches their itch a little bit.
Kennedy, I found your book via your independent stuff. I found that through a podcast. They love Rip, just so you know, a lot. It's their favorite. Next question? Over here, great.
Hi, you guys have talked a lot about criticism spaces and how you try not to engage with negative reviews, but how about any criticism that can sometimes be constructive, particularly with you, Kennedy? You're really good about trigger warnings, and because your books had the subject matter, and some people can't read it because that's a thing they can't handle. But for all of you, when you're told that, hey, this thing you have in your book, I didn't know it was coming, and it was really harmful to me, and I want to engage with you, but could you feel a little bit better about that? Do you engage with those at all? All three.
Okay. I talk a lot, you guys go.
Go, girl.
I'm really particular about content warnings. My the books I write lean heavy and lean emotional, and I'm much more concerned about a reader's well-being than I am about them not reading it. And I try, so usually my content warnings come in the form of author notes that are right at the beginning. When someone that's a little different. Like critiquing, like, girl, I hated Josiah because he was trifling. That's one thing. When someone says something you wrote did harm to me, I will interact with that because that's not like a critique of the work itself as much as there's something that you did that harmed me. And for me, the way I approach writing is I call it Hippocratic, which means for me, first do no harm. So I have a band of sensitivity readers with every time I'm writing a book. If it's outside of my lived experience, then I do interviews with people who have lived those experiences, and then I pay sensitivity readers, usually 5 to 6 sensitivity readers, to interrogate what I've written. I'm very vigilant about harm, which is different than, I just thought, the pacing, the whatever, that's very different. And I mean, there have been times when I've read a critical review, which it was a 3-star review, on my debut novel. And I didn't know at the time, Goodreads can be a hellhole. Don't go in there, child. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've got reviews. It was my very first book. And I read her review and I was like, you know what, she got a point. And I reached out to her and I said, hey, I read your review. And she goes, oh, hi, because it's like a 3-star review. And I said, no, I felt like, because it was my first book, I said, I felt like you made some really great points. Would you be opening to beta reading my next book? And she was like, I would. And that was 9 years ago, and she's still one of my beta readers. So I think it depends on the nature of what you're reading. There are some people who are just being nasty. And like I said, you don't get my piece. You don't get that. So it depends on the nature of what they're saying.
Yeah, I mean, if I've done harm, like, please call me in and I would like to do better. But we can't, it's so hard. Like Scarlett said, when you need to put up those boundaries, when you need to protect your mental health. And, I had done a couple of Zooms with book clubs for the rehearsals, and there were some readers who were unhappy with some choices that Megan made and let me know. And I was like, I can take it. I used to be an actor, like I can take the criticism, I can't. And so when I started writing for Twice in My Life, it was in my head along with my agent's voice, my editor's voice, and my critique partner's voices. And so I sat there thinking, okay, Layla has got to be so likable. Like, she's already doing something ethically murky by pretending she's still with this guy who forgot he broke up with her. That I have to make sure that, like, everything else she does is just sweet as pie. And my editor called me out and she's like, why is she so saccharine? Like, let her be angry and messy and relatable. And so I had to shut that out. So it's really hard. Like, I don't go out seeking criticism, but certainly if I, like Kennedy said, if I have done harm, please call me in so I can do better.
Yeah, I agree. I've had very similar situations. Ever since I published in 2018 my YA book, When Stars Come Out, I insisted on, and I self-published that, but I knew I was going to have a trigger warning for suicide. I insisted. That was before it was demanded on TikTok, but I think it's very valid because you have to give readers the choice, And anytime I have a book that is going to be released, it's going to have trigger warnings. I'm very particular about that, and I will show you where they're at on my TikTok. I think, one of the things I see a lot is mass attack on these things, where there's this idea that the intention is negative. And I honestly don't think that there is. I think it's ignorance, and in this country we think ignorance is bad, but it's actually not, and it's a chance to teach. So if you message authors, and they're receptive, I think that's the first place to start, instead of jumping on your platform and berating an author for something they probably are ignorant about, because we can't keep demonizing ignorance, or no one's going to be willing to learn. And that's kind of where I come from on that point. I think those conversations are very important. There's a huge difference in what I can't handle seeing every day, which is the Persephone's annoying as fuck, and only Hades is good, and even though they're the same goddamn people and they do the same stupid shit, I don't want to see that every day. But yeah, tell me, but have a kind conversation with me so I can have a kind conversation to you, because I'm gonna stop listening if you bitch at me, which is just how it is, and it's because I see it all the time, just happening to other people. and that steals part of you. It makes you afraid. It makes other authors afraid to even touch subjects. And I know it sucks because like we all want to talk about these things, but I have had authors message me after, seeing certain things, and they're just really afraid to even take the plunge to talk about mental illness or something, because what if they get it wrong, and what if readers, go after them on this viral TikTok app? They're afraid. We don't need to make people afraid to talk about things that matter, right? So if you see that, first try and reach out to the author, and I think more of a one-to-one way, and then hopefully they'll fix it. After that, if they don't listen to you, maybe you can take the next step. But give them the chance to fix it first, please.
Nobody wants to be called out ever in a public platform like that. If you have something to say, be kind. Again, going back to what I said earlier, authors are people too. They also have feelings. Any other questions in the back?
Yeah, a question is, how do you think social media, TikTok or Bookgram, have played into the discussion of, what's it called, with covers being discreet? And if you feel that is a thing, and I also discreet covers leading into also now book banning, and how those are all intertwined. And also the generational, I'm an elder millennial. It seems like the younger generation wants discreet covers. We're like, I love a naked man. but I also understand like not wanting a book showing up with a half naked man if you're like living at home. So I get the two things. Like, but I just want to know, how do you think the interaction with your fans or both mass media is playing into the decision to make covers not as sexy or flamboyant?
I don't have any answers to this, but as an aside, I do find the conversation fascinating. And in my little coven of writers, we had a discussion recently where someone said, if there's a dog on the cover, that means the spice level is low. And so we're like, is this true? No, it's not. It's not true. So we started going through and screenshotting all of these covers with dogs, and we're like, what is the spice level? What is the spice level? So, I don't think publishing has got it figured out, but it is a very, very fascinating conversation. I'd love to hear what they have to say.
I almost feel responsible for the discreet cover thing, because I don't know if I am, but my covers are quote unquote discreet, and A Touch of Darkness was one of the first books that really went viral on TikTok as a romance novel, and it has flowers on the front, but I wasn't trying to not be in the romance genre with traditionally. I was trying to convey what my book was, which was a kind of a fantasy, modern Hades and Persephone retelling, and I just felt like a contemporary cover didn't work for that. And I personally as an author, I'm not keen on people on the covers of my books. I'm just not. I love OG Harlequin covers. I love the Katie Roberts, all of her callback covers. They're my favorite. But it really wasn't intentional, and then all of a sudden I saw all these covers that were just flowers, the discreet floral covers, and I was like, I don't know where this happened. But I don't know the connection to censorship though. I think is the idea that you can read them in public because they're discreet and that's censorship? I just need clarification on that point.
The idea that some of the books, if we're banning books are being banned for whatever reason, that if you have a sexually incentivized cover for whatever reason, if you put a flower on it, it might stay on the shelves longer than one because it's hidden under the idea of and also I hear a lot of conversation with cartoon covers, how that's also looking like it's YA and confusing YA, and if they all have kind of a similar theme, you might have a younger person reading a book that's not meant for them.
Part of me thinks, I don't know if you guys think, I don't know if this is true, but part of me thinks it's just the trend in publishing. When something works out really well, publishing is going to jump on it like crazy. And so I don't know that there's this idea that it'll stay on the shelf longer. Now, I was a librarian for 5 years, and the books that were challenged are always in the LGBTQ plus space. It's never romance. From my experience, this is just, and I was a librarian in Oklahoma. And it's books. It's a lot of middle school books, a lot of on the books that librarians choose to be on the high school reading list. Those are the ones that get banned. Has nothing to do with what's on their cover. It doesn't have anything to do with the staying power of the book. So yeah, I don't know. I think mostly it's probably marketing. That's something I noticed that readers don't get a lot, is that they'll accuse authors of stealing other authors' covers, but a lot of times in traditional publishing, unless you're me, I have a say in what all my covers look like, but you don't have a say in what your covers look like, and they're just going to try and mimic other covers in your genre because it tells the reader that this book, you might like this book too. So they're trying to visually move you on to another book. I don't know if that's helpful. I'm sorry.
I do think that there is a correlation between the move toward discrete covers and BookTok. And I think this is a blanket statement. It's not completely accurate, but I think is indicative of a generational divide in a lot of ways, because my older readers are like, oh my gosh, where did the abs go? And my younger readers who are more on BookTok, they're like, oh my gosh, and they do not have any hesitation about telling you, oh my gosh, I hated that cover. I'm so glad you put flowers on it. And they'll even say, now I can read it. They're like, I couldn't read it before, but now that you've made it discreet, now, oh gosh, yes.
Like in public? Is that a thing? They can read
Yeah, they can read it in public. Yeah, they're like, before I could only read this book of yours on my e-reader, because I take the subway and I didn't want anyone to see me reading a book with, abs or anything like that. Now I can read your book on the subway like a paperback. And there is, like we talked about, there's a real push for paperbacks have exploded in a way we haven't seen in a long time because of BookTok. And I don't have a problem with it. Like, it's interesting to me. Also, a lot of the readers that, the Gen Z readers, for one of a better word, I'm, auntie here, the Gen Z readers who are coming, a lot of them are new to romance. So they're like, oh my gosh, who's this Colleen Hoover? And we're like, we've been reading these people for a really long time, but a lot of, especially like I said during COVID, there was this like flood of new readers, and a lot of them new to romance. And for some of them, they didn't want to see abs on covers, and I also have, I have a lot of Muslim readers who talk about living at home and it making things more difficult for them to read those books if they have men with naked chest on the cover. I can completely understand all of those things. I don't have a problem with that. The only thing I would interrogate is shame. Because what I don't want to promote is shame associated with a woman's pleasure or with sexuality. So that's the only thing I'm always like, okay, it's fine that you want a discreet cover and that you don't want a sexy cover. Like, I don't care about that. But what I want to get to the bottom of is, do you have shame about sexuality? Do you have shame about a woman's pleasure? Let's have that conversation, which is under, the cover.
We are towards the end, unfortunately. If you have more questions, our authors are going to be signing. Hang on to your questions. I'm sure you can sneak it in as quickly as possible. Make it quick, though. I do want to say thank you to our authors and, just for your participation today. For the whole weekend, you guys have been absolutely lovely. And thank you to all of the readers for coming. The authors will be proceeding to the sales and signing area at the Integrated Learning Center. Would you please make sure when we clear the room, we clear it up quickly, take everything with you. And again, thank you.